Have you ever felt like something from your past is still holding you back? Maybe it's not just in your mind. Your tough childhood could still be impacting your life today, even in your 60s. It's shocking, but many of the struggles we face as seniors, whether it's stress, relationships, or even physical health, are tied to unresolved trauma from our early years. In this video, we're diving into 13 super-specific signs that your childhood might still be affecting you, and most importantly, how you can start healing now. Don't let the past control your future. Let's begin this journey toward healing together. Meet Carol, a strong and independent woman in her 60s who's always prided herself on being resilient. She's raised a family, built a career, and enjoyed the simple pleasures of life. But lately something feels off. Despite her many accomplishments, Carol has been struggling with something she can't shake. Constant stress, self-doubt, and feelings of isolation. What she's realizing now is that these emotions aren't just random. They're connected to a past she's never fully addressed. Carol grew up in a turbulent home surrounded by emotional distance and neglect. Her parents were distant and her needs often went unnoticed. As a child, she learned to bottle up her emotions, never quite feeling safe or valued. Although Carol went on to live a full and successful life, those childhood wounds are still following her into her 60s. Now she finds herself dealing with anxiety, difficulty trusting others, and a constant fear of failure, even though she has more experience and wisdom than ever before. Her story might sound familiar. Many of us carry pieces of our childhood with us into adulthood, often without realizing it. But the good news is that just like Carol, you can heal and start living a more fulfilled life, free from the weight of the past. So, if you're ready to uncover the signs that your childhood could still be affecting you, and more importantly, learn how to heal, hit that like button and subscribe for more life-changing advice. Let's start this journey together. Have you ever found yourself feeling overwhelmed by a situation that seems on the surface like no big deal? For Carol, this is something she experiences often. A small argument with her spouse or a change in plans at work, things that seem trivial to most, suddenly make her feel like she's back in the turmoil of her childhood. Her heart races, her palms sweat, and she's instantly flooded with anxiety. To an outsider, it might seem like an overreaction, but for Carol, this response is rooted in unresolved emotions from her past. As a child, Carol was often ignored or dismissed when she expressed her feelings. When she needed reassurance, it wasn't there. These emotional wounds, left untreated, have resurfaced in her adult life. The smallest stressors now serve as emotional triggers, evoking feelings of abandonment and being misunderstood, feelings that were never addressed when she was young. This kind of emotional overload is more common than you might think, especially for those of us who grew up in difficult environments. It's a sign that the past hasn't been healed yet. These emotional triggers can be incredibly draining, and they don't just go away on their own. They affect our relationships, our mental well-being, and even our physical health. It's as if we're still stuck in the same emotional space we occupied as children, unable to move forward fully. But the good news is that recognizing these triggers is the first step in healing. Once you start to identify them, you can begin to take control of how you respond and start addressing the underlying issues that cause them. Do you find yourself reacting to seemingly small problems with overwhelming emotions? You're not alone. It's important to recognize that these triggers may be more than just bad moods or stressful situations. They could be signs that your past is influencing your present. If you're experiencing something similar, share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear how you cope with these emotional moments, and together we can support each other on the path to healing. Do you ever find yourself questioning your worth or abilities, even when you know deep down you're more than capable? For Carol, this feeling is all too familiar. Despite her many accomplishments, raising a family, building a successful career, and being an active member of her community, she can't shake the voice inside her head telling her she's not good enough. It's as though no matter how hard she works or how much she achieves, there's a lingering sense of inadequacy that she just can't escape. This chronic self-doubt is something Carol has carried with her since childhood. Growing up, she never received the validation or encouragement she needed. Her achievements were often overlooked or dismissed, and she learned to believe that her best wasn't good enough. In her mind, she wasn't worthy of recognition or praise, and that belief took root deep within her. As a result, even now in her 60s, Carol finds herself second-guessing every decision, feeling like an imposter despite the undeniable success she's had in her life. Does this sound familiar to you? It's incredibly frustrating when you know you have so much to offer the world, but something inside holds you back. It's like standing in front of a mirror and seeing a stranger instead of the confident, capable person you actually are. That inner critic, often formed in childhood, can be a powerful force that shapes the way we see ourselves and how we engage with the world around us. But here's the truth. Self-doubt isn't an accurate reflection of who you are. It's a distortion created by past experiences. Carol's journey, and yours, can take a turn for the better once we start challenging these negative thoughts and recognizing them for what they are, echoes from the past. If you can relate to Carol's struggles with self-doubt and low self-esteem, you're not alone. It's time to rewrite that narrative and start recognizing your worth. Do you struggle with self-doubt too? What steps have you taken to overcome it? Share your experience in the comments below and let's continue this conversation. Have you ever felt like, no matter how much you want to connect with others, something inside you keeps holding back? Maybe you've even pushed people away, afraid that they'll disappoint or hurt you, just like others did when you were younger. For Carol, this has been a constant challenge. Despite having wonderful friends and family, she often finds herself keeping people at arm's length. The reason? Trust issues that trace all the way back to her childhood. Growing up in an unstable home, Carol learned early on that people, especially the ones who were supposed to care for her, weren't always reliable. She had to fend for herself emotionally because her parents were absent and promises were often broken. This experience planted the seed of distrust that Carol carried into adulthood. As a result, even when others show her kindness and support, she finds it hard to believe they won't let her down. The fear of being abandoned or betrayed leads Carol to keep her distance, even from people who genuinely want to be there for her. This difficulty trusting others isn't just about relationships. It can affect your ability to ask for help, share your vulnerabilities, and form meaningful connections. When trust is broken at a young age, it becomes a defense mechanism we carry with us, even when we're surrounded by people who are trustworthy and loving. The good news is that trust can be rebuilt, but it requires patience with yourself and others. It starts with recognizing the root of your fears and understanding that the past doesn't dictate the future. Carol is learning to let go of the past and slowly rebuild her ability to trust, one small step at a time. Have you found it hard to trust others? It's something many of us face, and it's important to recognize that you're not alone in this struggle. Trust takes time to build, but it's possible to overcome the walls built by childhood experiences. How have you dealt with trust issues? Share your story in the comments below, and let's support each other on this journey toward healing and stronger relationships. Have you ever caught yourself doing something just to make others happy, even when it leaves you feeling drained and unfulfilled? For Carol, this is something she does constantly. She goes out of her way to please others, whether it's volunteering for tasks she doesn't want to do or saying yes when she really wants to say no. She thinks that by making people happy, she'll finally feel accepted and valued. But deep down, she's left feeling exhausted and empty. This need to please others is rooted in Carol's childhood, where she often faced neglect and criticism. As a child, she learned that the only way to receive attention or approval was to constantly meet others' expectations, even at the cost of her own needs. She quickly became a people pleaser, thinking that if she just did enough for others, they would care for her in return. This pattern followed her into adulthood and even into her 60s, where she still feels compelled to put everyone else's needs before her own. While wanting to help others and be kind is natural, when it's rooted in people-pleasing, it can be harmful. It drains your energy, leaves you feeling resentful, and ultimately doesn't lead to true fulfillment. The need for external validation takes precedence over your own well-being, and that's a dangerous cycle to be caught in. Carol is learning to break this pattern by setting boundaries and understanding that she doesn't have to sacrifice her own happiness to make others happy. It's a journey that takes time, but it's an essential step in healing from childhood wounds. But here's the thing, this people-pleasing behavior is only one part of a bigger picture. The next sign might be the most unexpected one. You won't want to miss it, so stay with us. Have you ever felt like nothing you do is ever good enough, no matter how hard you try? Like you have to be perfect in everything just to feel worthy or accepted? For Carol, this is a daily struggle. She has always pushed herself to do everything perfectly, whether it's keeping her home spotless, excelling in her hobbies, or even maintaining relationships. If things aren't exactly right, she feels like she's failing. It's exhausting, and it often leads to frustration and disappointment. Carol's perfectionistic tendencies are deeply rooted in her childhood. Growing up in an environment where mistakes were met with harsh criticism and where she was constantly told she wasn't doing enough, Carol internalized the message that being perfect was the only way to gain approval and avoid rejection. This pressure to be flawless followed her into adulthood, and now, in her 60s, it's affecting her health. The constant striving for perfection takes a toll on her mental and physical well-being. She's frequently anxious, stressed, and unable to relax, worried that even the smallest imperfection will reflect poorly on her. Perfectionism can be dangerous because it's an unattainable goal. No one is perfect, and trying to live up to impossible standards can lead to burnout, depression, and even physical ailments. The key to overcoming perfectionism is learning to embrace imperfection and understanding that making mistakes is part of being human. Carol is beginning to accept that her best is enough, even if it's not perfect. It's a gradual process, but it's one that leads to greater self-compassion and inner peace. Do you ever feel like you can't just let go and relax, always feeling the need to get everything just right? If so, you're not alone. Perfectionism is something many of us struggle with, especially if we grew up in demanding or critical environments. But the good news is that you can overcome it. How do you handle the pressure to be perfect? Let us know in the comments below, and let's talk about how we can all start letting go of that unrealistic standard and start living more freely. Have you ever found yourself stuck in a cycle of negative thoughts, where you replay past mistakes or failures over and over, as if they're happening all over again? Carol experiences this daily. She can't seem to break free from the loop of negative thinking that started in her childhood. Whenever something goes wrong in her life, whether it's a small setback or a bigger challenge, her mind automatically goes to the past, replaying old failures as if they're still happening today. This constant replay of negative memories keeps her stuck in a cycle of self-doubt and regret, making it almost impossible for her to move forward. This repetitive negative thought pattern is a direct result of Carol's past trauma. Growing up in an unpredictable and emotionally painful environment, she learned to focus on her mistakes as a way of surviving. Her childhood taught her that failure was something to be feared and avoided at all costs. So, when things go wrong, she's unable to shake off those old memories, and it feels like she's reliving them over and over again. This cycle not only keeps her mentally stuck, but also impacts her emotional well-being, causing anxiety, frustration, and even physical symptoms like sleepless nights. If you've ever experienced something similar, you know how draining it can be. These thoughts may seem impossible to escape from, but there is hope. Breaking the cycle of negative thinking starts with acknowledging it and gradually shifting the focus away from past failures. Carol is working on rewiring her mind to focus on the present moment and on her successes, however small they may seem. Over time, this helps reduce the intensity of those negative loops and frees her from the past. Ever caught yourself in a negative thought loop, unable to escape the cycle? It's something many of us struggle with, especially after difficult childhood experiences. But it's possible to break free. How do you deal with negative thoughts when they come up? Share your strategies in the comments below, and let's support each other in overcoming these patterns together. Have you ever found it impossible to say no when someone asks something of you, even if it's at the expense of your own well-being? Carol knows this struggle all too well. She constantly feels overwhelmed by the demands of others, whether it's family, friends, or even strangers. The reason? She has a hard time setting boundaries. Carol grew up in an environment where her needs were often ignored, and her emotional boundaries were constantly crossed. As a result, she never learned how to assert herself or protect her own space. As a child, Carol had to constantly adapt to the needs and moods of the adults around her, often neglecting her own emotional needs in the process. She learned early on that her voice didn't matter, and saying no would often lead to rejection or punishment. This lack of boundary setting in childhood has carried over into her adult life, leaving her feeling constantly drained and stretched thin. Now, in her 60s, Carol often feels overwhelmed and resentful because she's too afraid to assert her needs or say no when others ask for her time or energy. Setting boundaries is crucial for maintaining mental and emotional health. If you don't protect your personal space, you risk burnout, frustration, and resentment. Carol is beginning to understand the importance of setting boundaries, and she's taking small steps to reclaim her voice and assert her needs. It's a process. But each time she says no without guilt, she feels a little more empowered. But here's the exciting part. Carol's journey toward healing is just beginning. You won't believe what happens when she finally starts to heal. Stay tuned to find out. Do you ever feel more tired than you should even after a full night's sleep, or experience unexplained physical symptoms like constant headaches or body tension? Carol knows this all too well. Despite trying to take care of herself, she finds herself exhausted almost all the time, with persistent aches and pains in her body. She doesn't understand why she's so worn out, especially when she's not doing anything more strenuous than usual. But here's the truth. Emotional trauma can show up in your body in ways you may not even realize. For Carol, years of neglect, criticism, and emotional strain in her childhood have manifested as chronic fatigue, tension, and even frequent headaches. Her body has been holding on to the stress, anxiety, and unresolved emotions for decades, and it's now taking a physical toll. The weight of past trauma doesn't just live in our minds. It can infiltrate our bodies, causing us to feel drained, tense, or in pain, even when there doesn't seem to be a direct physical cause. When we're emotionally overwhelmed or stressed, our bodies react in ways we might not always notice. Tight shoulders, headaches, digestive issues, or feeling perpetually fatigued. These are all signs that our emotional health needs attention. For Carol, understanding that her physical symptoms weren't just in her head was a huge breakthrough. It wasn't just aging, it was the lingering effects of past trauma. The key to healing is recognizing the mind-body connection. Carol has started to focus on stress management techniques like deep breathing, meditation, and gentle exercise to help release the tension that's built up over the years. She's also exploring therapy and emotional healing practices to address the root cause of her chronic fatigue. Slowly, but surely, she's learning that healing her emotional wounds can help heal her body too. Have you ever experienced unexplained physical symptoms like chronic fatigue or tension in your body? It's not uncommon, especially when emotional trauma is involved. How did you cope with these symptoms? Let us know in the comments, and let's talk about how we can start addressing the mind-body connection together. Have you ever experienced anxiety or a panic attack seemingly out of nowhere? Maybe everything seems fine, but your heart starts racing, Your palms get sweaty, and you're overwhelmed with fear. Carol has felt this too. Despite having no immediate reason for anxiety, she finds herself suddenly feeling panicked or on edge. The truth is, these feelings have deep roots in her past. Carol grew up in a chaotic and unpredictable environment where she was constantly waiting for the next emotional crisis or crisis of survival. As a child, she never knew when the next argument, disappointment or loss would strike, which kept her in a constant state of hypervigilance. She had to always be on guard, ready to react to whatever came her way. This learned fear has stayed with her even now in her 60s, and it manifests as unexpected anxiety and panic attacks. Sometimes these anxiety attacks are triggered by situations that seem perfectly innocuous to others. A stressful event at work, a change in routine, or even a reminder of a past disappointment can trigger that sense of impending doom Carol felt growing up. It's as if her mind and body are still stuck in that mode of survival, even though there's no immediate threat. This type of anxiety is a common response to past trauma. Your body becomes so used to being in fight or flight mode that it continues to react to stressors, even when they aren't life-threatening. The good news is that with awareness and tools, you can learn to manage this anxiety. Carol has started to practice grounding techniques, deep breathing and mindfulness to calm herself when she feels anxiety creeping in. She's also seeking therapy to address the root causes of her anxiety, learning to break the cycle of fear and learn how to relax again. Has anxiety or panic ever crept into your life unexpectedly? Share your story below, and let's talk about how we can all manage anxiety together, especially as we grow older. Remember, you're not alone in this. Have you ever felt completely disconnected from your emotions? Like you're just going through the motions of life without truly feeling anything? For Carol, this is all too familiar. She often feels emotionally numb, unable to connect with her own feelings or with those around her. It's not that she doesn't care, it's that her childhood taught her to suppress her emotions as a survival mechanism. Growing up in an environment where emotional expression wasn't safe or valued, Carol learned early on to disconnect from her feelings. If she showed vulnerability or sadness, it often led to rejection or even worse, further emotional pain. So she shut down. Over time, this coping mechanism became ingrained in her, and now, as an adult in her 60s, she finds it difficult to access her emotions or connect with others in a meaningful way. This emotional numbness or dissociation can be a defense mechanism that helps protect us from pain. When we experience overwhelming trauma or distress, disconnecting from our emotions can feel like a way to avoid further hurt. But over time, it can create a barrier between us and the world, leaving us feeling distant from ourselves and others. For Carol, this emotional disconnect has been a challenge in her personal relationships as she struggles to fully engage with her loved ones. She's realized that in order to heal, she needs to start feeling her emotions again, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. Carol is working on ways to slowly reconnect with her feelings, using mindfulness practices, journaling, and talking to a therapist. Little by little, she's learning how to open up and allow herself to feel again. Do you ever feel disconnected from your emotions? It's something many people face, especially after years of emotional trauma. Let us know how you work through it in the comments below. And let's support each other in rediscovering our emotional connection. Forgiveness is one of the most powerful tools for healing, but it's also one of the hardest things to do, especially when the pain runs deep. Carol has found herself holding on to grudges from her childhood, and those lingering resentments are blocking her emotional healing. For years, she couldn't forgive the people who hurt her, whether it was her parents, relatives, or others who had abandoned or mistreated her. Carol's childhood was filled with emotional pain and neglect. The people who should have nurtured her instead left her feeling abandoned, betrayed, and unworthy. Now, decades later, even though she's built a life of her own, she finds herself carrying that resentment with her. Every time she thinks about the past, that bitterness creeps back in, preventing her from truly moving forward. The truth is, holding on to anger and resentment does more harm to us than it does to the people we're angry at. It keeps us trapped in the past, unable to fully experience the joy and peace we deserve in the present. For Carol, this inability to forgive has kept her from forming deeper, more meaningful connections with others, and even from feeling at peace with herself. But Carol is beginning to realize that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or excusing the wrongs done to her. It's about freeing herself from the emotional chains that have kept her stuck. She's learning that forgiveness is an act of self-compassion, not for the other person, but for her own healing. Carol has started to work through the process of letting go of the past with the help of therapy and journaling. Slowly, she's learning how to release the grudges that have held her back for so long. Forgiveness is a journey and it's not easy, but it's a necessary step toward healing and emotional freedom. Have you ever struggled with forgiveness? How do you feel about letting go of past hurts? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Let's support each other on this difficult yet rewarding path of healing. Do you ever feel isolated, even when you're surrounded by people who care? For Carol, this is a constant struggle. Even though she has friends and family who love her, she often feels alone. This isolation doesn't come from a lack of social connections, but from an emotional wall that she's built over the years. Carol finds it difficult to open up, even to those closest to her. Growing up, Carol didn't learn how to trust or rely on others for emotional support. She faced neglect and emotional distance, which led her to retreat inwardly, feeling safer by keeping her emotions to herself. As a result, even now, she finds herself withdrawing from social situations and avoiding deep emotional connections. Carol fears that if she opens up, she'll get hurt again, so she keeps people at arm's length. This emotional withdrawal is a common result of past trauma. When you've been hurt or abandoned in the past, it's natural to want to protect yourself from future pain. But over time, this isolation can become a prison. It prevents us from experiencing the love and support that others are offering, leaving us feeling disconnected and lonely. Carol's isolation has created a barrier between her and the people who truly care about her, making it hard for her to experience the joy of shared moments. But she's beginning to realize that this emotional withdrawal is holding her back from living the full life she deserves. Through therapy and mindfulness practices, Carol is starting to understand the importance of vulnerability and emotional connection. She's slowly working on opening up and letting others in, allowing herself to be supported and loved. But what happens when Carol starts healing is truly inspiring. Stay tuned to find out. Have you ever found yourself stuck in the same patterns, even though you know deep down they're not healthy for you? Carol has. Despite her best efforts to break free, she often finds herself attracting the same type of people and getting caught in the same dysfunctional relationships that remind her of her past. It's as if her past trauma is guiding her choices, even when she consciously wants something different. Carol has noticed that she tends to gravitate toward people who are emotionally distant or unavailable, much like the caregivers in her childhood who weren't able to meet her emotional needs. Despite knowing these relationships are toxic, Carol finds herself repeating this cycle over and over again. This is a common result of unresolved childhood trauma. When we experience neglect, abuse, or emotional pain in our early years, we learn certain behaviors and patterns to cope. These patterns become ingrained, and even as adults we might unconsciously recreate the same dynamics in our relationships or life choices. It's like we're trying to fix the past, but instead we end up repeating it. For Carol, recognizing this pattern has been an important step in her healing journey. She's now aware of how her past has shaped her choices and is working to break the cycle by setting healthier boundaries, seeking support, and making more conscious decisions. It's not easy, but Carol is learning that healing requires breaking free from these patterns and choosing a different path forward. Have you ever noticed yourself repeating unhealthy patterns in relationships or life choices? Share your experience in the comments below. Together we can break free from the cycles that hold us back. After Carol began to recognize and address the pain from her childhood, something remarkable started to happen. It wasn't an overnight change, but little by little she began to feel lighter, freer. By acknowledging the wounds she had carried for so long, Carol was finally able to heal and let go of the emotional weight that had been holding her back. She started setting healthier boundaries, allowing herself to trust others, and letting go of the guilt and shame that had been ingrained in her for so many years. Carol learned to forgive, both others and herself, and as a result she found deeper peace and joy in her life. Her relationships became more fulfilling, and her inner world began to reflect the healing she had worked so hard to achieve. The journey wasn't easy, but it was worth it. Carol now lives a life that is more authentic, connected, and full of possibilities. She's finally able to embrace the love and support that she once pushed away. And most importantly, she's at peace with herself. If Carol can do it, so can you. Healing is possible, and it's never too late to begin. If this video resonated with you, hit that like button and share it with someone who might need to hear it today. Your support helps spread this important message to others who may be struggling with similar challenges. Also, let's keep the conversation going in the comments. What signs of past trauma have you noticed in your life? Let's talk about it below. Remember, you're not alone on this journey, and sharing our experiences can help us all heal and grow.